Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Speakers on Edge. We're doing 15 minutes of fame where we have voices of vision, sharing messages that matter. And today, my guest is Abbas. Who are you?
Jake, thanks for having me on. My name's Abbas. I own a company called Remote Leverage. And what we do is we help US businesses hire virtual assistants, remote employees from Latin America for many different roles, admin, sales, customer support, whatever, typically like $6 to $10 per hour. And we've been growing very fast. We started about a year and a half ago or so. And then over the past 7 months, we grew from 50,000 a month in revenue. We're now doing about 450,000 a month in revenue. And so, been growing very, very fast because there's a lot of demand for this business model. But initially, when I first started in business, I was 18 years old. I got in and became a real estate agent at the time with REMAX. And then within about 4 years or so, I became top 50 in the country with REMAX. REMAX has about 160, 70,000 agents. I was top 50. And the way I did it was because I learned how to leverage, how to scale with virtual assistants. At the time, I was hiring from the Philippines and countries like that in Asia. And then later on switched to Latin America. And so then when I got out of real estate, I just got a little bored because I was one of the top agents in the area. So I wanted to do something bigger. And so I started Remote Leverage. But when I got out of real estate, I just decided, look, I'm going to focus on, hiring Latin American VAs for other businesses, and that's how Remote Leverage started. And we've been growing very fast as a result of that.
That's a pretty impressive journey.
I appreciate that.
I'm just hearing the numbers, and we're talking $6 or $7 per hour, or $6 to $10 per hour. That's amazingly inexpensive. How good is that for the worker, for those virtual assistants?
Yeah, great question. So that is way higher than what they would get with local jobs, which is really interesting because I go to these Latin American countries all the time. I see people working. So $6 to $10 per hour is way higher. But the other thing is that they don't have to commute to work. If you ever visit Mexico City, you'll see it's super busy. It's a hassle. So people hate driving 30, 40, 50 minutes or an hour. And then they go to these jobs that only pay them whatever, $3, $4 per hour, versus like working with US companies. Let's say they're making 7, 8, 9, 10 per hour. They could work from home. They get paid higher wages. They have more stable jobs. So we get about 800 to 1,000 applications per day of people applying for jobs with us. Obviously, not everybody makes it. I think less than 0.5% make it to through the interview process. But there's a lot of demand to work with US companies because the salaries are much better, and the working conditions. Obviously US companies treat their employees better than sometimes Latin American countries do.
So I want to get a little bit of clarity here because, okay, we're a US company. We have the American government who want their cut of any employees' money that we pay out. Are these people a direct employee or are they a business expense?
Sure. So they are a business expense for sure. Now, you can set them up to be employees, but that is a very complicated process. Most of our clients, the vast majority, do not do that. The vast majority of our clients and myself for my team, we set them up as independent contractors. So essentially, we pay them, and then they handle their own taxes in their respective countries. Because like I have now 54, 55 team members in Remote Leverage that work for me directly, and they're all over Latin America. Some of them are in Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, whatever. And so there's no way I could handle direct employment in all of these different countries and follow all these different regulations. So we just pay them as independent contractors. They handle their taxes. It's way simpler than hiring US people. I've hired US talent before, and dealing with the IRS was not fun. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, but what about employing American people?
So it's interesting. I've tried that to see if the results are going to be any better, and I can tell you we find way better talent for way less money from Latin America. And the reason is, if I'm trying to hire, say, I live in California, I'm in the Bay Area, right? minimum wage job is about $15, but the reality is, most businesses to get a low level type of worker, entry level type of worker, you're going to have to pay 23, $24 per hour because the cost of living here is astronomically high. And then what happens is you're limited. Not only are you paying way more, but you're limited in the type of talent you get because you're only advertising in your local city or your local whatever county. Versus when we hire from Latin America, given the same exact job, I can advertise to the entire region, the entire Latin America region, and so we get significantly more applicants with way higher qualifications that have worked for U.S. companies because you're just advertising to way more people. So and then the other part of it, obviously, too, is that because they live outside of the U.S., they're cheaper, so they're more qualified and they're cheaper than U.S. talent.
That's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
massive advantage.
Yeah, and
Well,
that's why I found that's why growing remote leverage has been so easy because I mean, imagine like my some of my best employees or team members, I'm getting them for a fraction of the cost, and so now hiring top talent is no longer a bottleneck to the business. And so, in a lot of times, when you're growing a business, you need help, you need different people to do different tasks, but you're also constrained by the salary because if you're a newer business, you can't afford it. Versus, with this model, we anytime we need a skill brought into the business, the first thing is we just go out and hire because I don't even have to think about the cost of the salary. It's so small in comparison to the value that they would bring in.
so let's just talk about the value that they bring in, because how have you got any examples of companies who? I mean, I don't want you to name them, but have
Sure.
you got any examples of how companies have taken your staff and how they have grown, how it has actually benefited them directly?
100%. So I'll give you one. There's one that is based out of Sacramento. They're an HVAC company, and so HVAC, it's a profitable business model in the U.S., right? Working in HVAC, but the problem is they're competing nowadays with a lot of private equity companies, and private equity companies are really good at monetizing the customer because they charge more. They have a bunch of upsells versus local companies are usually not set up that way. And so one of the biggest HVAC companies in Sacramento came to us and they're like, "Look, our margins are getting thinner, and we're finding it very difficult to hire local talent to fill the office staff, right? Whether it's customer support, admin, executive assistants, they're paying a lot of salaries for people that could easily be, remote employees or workers." And so they started working with us. They hired their first customer support rep. Saw the quality was exactly the same as the US. In fact, they were even better because they spoke Spanish and a lot of their customers are Hispanic. So that was really good. They hired a bunch more, and then they started hiring a lot of admins. They hired an executive assistant. So now their entire team is completely remote except the people that actually go out and service the HVAC units or place it. So these people are obviously going to have to be in person, but their entire backend team is now 100% remote. And he said that their margins were compressing so much to the point where he was not even sure if they want to stay in business or not because they weren't that profitable anymore. And so now they're growing again. They keep hiring from us and referred us a lot of people since then. We've also worked with a lot of like accounting companies. In fact, we've worked with Bench. It's the biggest accounting company in the US. I think they have like 250, 300 employees. And they hire a lot of accountants through us as well because they're remote. They're way cheaper than what they would get in Canada. Previously, they used to hire in Canada. And now they're just hiring in Latin America because of the service that we provide.
This is huge. This is huge because this is okay. So these are the bigger companies. What about those small entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
What's it like for them? Because what's it like for the startup cost? Let's say I wanted to hire one VA.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's it going to cost me?
I would say the vast majority of our clients tend to be the smaller ones. But so our target market are business owners that have between 1 to 5 employees. Those are the most common employers that we work for or with. Typically, what we recommend for somebody like that, when they come into us, we have a consultation because we want to figure out what is the true bottleneck in the business. Because sometimes people come to us and they say, "Hey, I want to hire an admin." But then we talk to them and it's like, actually, you don't need an admin. You need a sales rep to call all the leads that you're spending all your time calling, and then you'll have other work. And so like we try to figure out truly what is the best role for them to hire for. Once we figure that out, then we pass them on to a hiring manager, and the hiring manager's job is to get them the best person for the type of work that they need to offload. Really, one of the things we look at is like, okay, let's say you come into work, 40, 50 hours a week. What are you doing in those 50 hours, right? And then we help them basically delegate the things that take the most amount of time, that have the least amount of dollars per hour essentially to their business. So we help them delegate that. Most of the time, on the first hire that they make, we recommend hiring better talent. We don't want entry level people, because if you're hiring your first executive assistant, you're hiring your first salesperson, your first closer, you want someone that would come in and help you build the processes so that the next person you hire can be cheaper and just follow the process that the more expensive person would have basically set up for them. So typically, for these type of roles, we want advanced type of people. They usually cost between $8 to $10 per hour for most roles, right? Sales, customer support, admin. Usually, we're looking at $8 to $10 per hour. And then the way we get paid is we don't charge them anything until after they conduct interviews. So they tell us what they want. We go out, we do a whole search, find them about usually 6 to 8 candidates that are very qualified. They meet them on Zoom, and we help them with the interview if they need help with that, because a lot of times they haven't interviewed people, so they don't know what questions to ask. So we help them ask these questions, and then if they're interested in moving forward with a hire, then we charge a one-time placement fee basically. And then anytime they want to hire in the future, they can come back and they get a 50% discount. So we get a lot of repeat business, which is why we try to figure out the best role for them, because we want to make sure that they come back again and again and again as the company keeps growing.
See, the one thing I love about this is you're helping other people grow, which in turn is growing your business.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who has created an absolutely highly successful business, what would you say to the person who's watching today who wants to grow their business? What's the most important thing for them to do?
Yeah. I would go back to when I first got in business when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. I remember I was a real estate agent, and I had a business mentor at the time. And, I was doing relatively well. I was making about 350, 400,000 a year, when I was 19. But I was working 15, 16 hours a day, literally 7 days a week. And I remember calling my business mentor at the time and I said, well, how do I continue growing the business? I'm already working 16 hours a day. I literally have no life besides work. And his thing at the time was like, well, you're doing good enough, just keep at it basically for the rest of your life. And I did not find that to be a good answer at the time. And I decided, look, I want to start, like the reason I have a business is to have a life, not the other way around. And so what I started doing is that's when I started, at the time I thought it was a risk to hire somebody because it would cost money. But then I did that. I saw that I was having much better results because now I could leave the office and still have work be done. So then I was like, okay, if I could do this with one person, what if I hire a second? What if I hire a third and a fourth and a fifth? And I just kept repeating that cycle over and over again until, my business then just would double, triple every single year until I became top 50, like I said, in the country. And honestly, none of that would have happened had I not done that. And in that business. And then when I got to remote leverage, instead of doing that from scratch where I would work 16 hours, I literally since day one, I was like, okay, these are the things we're going to need to do. I'm just going to hire people from the start. But that's because I was a lot more experienced. I had a lot more money saved up from the real estate business. I know for some businesses it's difficult to do that. But I would say if you're stuck, the reality is you can either work more hours or you could work smarter by leveraging other people. And a lot of times, the people that you hire sometimes will come in and they will do it. Not only are they going to take over your work, but they will do it even better because that's the only task that they will do. And if they're more experienced than you because they've worked at a larger company, they can help you streamline and grow that side of the business so then you can focus on other things. And you just keep repeating that cycle. You work on something, you realize, look, I can hire somebody for it. You delegate, you move on to the next task. And that's why we've been growing remote leverage so fast.
I want to ask one more question because we're
Sure.
almost at the 15-minute mark. But how can that business owner who is working those 17 hours a day, how can he or she get it in their head that the way to grow is to hire somebody to do what they're not good at? Because usually the reason the business isn't growing is because if they're not good at one aspect of the business.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody with that?
I think the reason people think that sometimes is because they think that they're the best at whatever it is they're doing, but the reality is they're not. Like, I'll give you an example. When I first started Remote Leverage, I'm very good at marketing, and I've never hired a marketer. I've hired every other role except marketing, because to me, marketing is super important. And so when I started Remote Leverage, for the first 4 or 5 months, I was the only person running our marketing at the time. And I got us up to about 50,000 a month, but it was difficult to scale beyond that because I was not the best. So our cost per lead was very high, our cost per client was very high. And I thought, you know what? Let me try to hire somebody and see what other ideas they could bring to the business. So then I hired one of our competitors' head of marketing, and she came into the business. Literally in 1 month, we went from 50,000 a month to 160, 70,000 a month in 1 month. And the reason we were able to do that is because she brought the cost per lead down so much to the point where it was extremely cheap to scale. And I was able, whatever I was paying her, the amount of money that she saved me by doing that task way better than I could ever do it was paid off in like literally a couple of days of her work. So I would say, don't think of hiring as an expense. Hiring, if you hire the right people, will be a return. Typically, whenever I hire people, I think of it as an investment. You're paying a little bit of money right now, but you should see returns very quickly from it. And if you're not, then you just hired the wrong person and you need to swap them out very quickly. So, and at Remote Leverage, like for us, when I hire, we hire very quickly. We want to see results. And if we don't see results very quickly, we get the people out, get somebody else in, because we're running it. We need a business, and it's, we need to run a profit. So.
And you ended on the one word that I've been waiting to hear for this whole interview. You wanted to make a profit. Because with that profit comes the lifestyle. With that profit comes the choices. With that profit comes the opportunity for you to live the life for your dreams. Abbas, you have been incredible. This has been the 15 Minutes of Fame. We've gone a minute or two over time, but that's okay. We'll see you next time, folks. Bye for now.
Thank you for having me.